If you're planning a trip to Morocco, I've got 10 essential tips you need to know before you go. And the last one is a bonus tip for Starbucks fans. So number one is about visa requirements. So you might be asking, do you need a visa to visit Morocco? Well, it depends on your nationality. Citizens of the US do not need a visa for stays up to 90 days. So just make sure to check the latest visa requirements before your trip. And I'm going to include a link in the description below to the official US travel government website so you can confirm. Another thing you might be wondering is what languages are spoken in Morocco or Marrakech. So primarily they speak Arabic and French. And if you don't speak these languages, you can download the French or Arabic languages on your Translate app. And what I like to use is Google Translate. It's free and I've been using it for many trips and it works for me. From my experience in Marrakech, a lot of menus are in French. So if you want to explore local restaurants, this would be a really good thing for you to download. And of course, Arabic can be helpful too, but from what I can see, French is more common on menus. So let me just show you real quick how I use the Google Translate app at a restaurant. So I just kind of like hover my camera over the menu and it would just translate what the words are. So you don't have to guess what you're ordering. Another tip I have for you, it's related to languages, and this is just my personal observation, but many people will pretend like they understood me, but they didn't. So they might do this to be polite, but it can cause some issues. So for example, I noticed that when I asked something in English, they would respond, but then what they did later, like their actions, would show that they had no idea what I just said. So this is crucial if you have food allergies or questions about, payments and things like that. I think they do it out of, being kind maybe, or, being polite, but don't just assume that they understood what you said, but really confirm to avoid any misunderstandings or confusions. And the fourth tip I have for you is about internet connectivity. So our hotel had okay Wi-Fi, but it was hard to find when we were out and about. So I would recommend getting a data plan with an eSIM before you leave for your trip. There's a lot out there. I personally used Airalo eSIM and it gave me consistent connectivity across various cities and remote areas in Morocco. So whether I was hiking to the waterfalls or if I took a day trip to Isaida, which is by the coast, I didn't have any issues with it. I will have a video coming up about staying connected while traveling in Morocco, so make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Another common question I get asked is, can I drink the tap water in Marrakech? It's generally not recommended to drink straight from the tap. What I would do is stick to bottled water to avoid any stomach issues. You don't want that. And for my American friends, don't expect free water at restaurants. You're usually going to get a 1-liter bottle for about 25 to 30 Moroccan dirhams. And Morocco is hot and dry, so drink up and stay hydrated. Another tip I have for you is keeping the money exchange receipt. So when you're exchanging money from your currency to the Moroccan dirhams, you want to keep your receipt just in case you have dirhams left over before your departure, in case you want to exchange it back to your other currency. This is according to the research I found online, and I'm going to link that in the description box below as well. So for me personally, I only exchanged what I needed, but it's good to know that you have that option to exchange the money back to, your home currency. So speaking of money, a pro tip I have for you is to buy bottles of water at big supermarkets. This helps you to stay hydrated throughout your trip, and you also get change to buy souvenirs or, to tip at restaurants or taxis, because you don't really want to haggle at a souk or, haggle with a taxi person and not have to change because they might not have changed either conveniently. And smaller convenience stores might not even sell to you if you try to give them a large bill for a small purchase. Just keep that in mind to buy water at big supermarkets so you can get water and get the change that you need. Another question I get asked a lot is about taking taxis in Morocco or how to get around in Marrakech. So if you're taking taxis, there are taxi apps that you're going to find online, but they're hit or miss. A few of them is like InDrive and Kareem. So InDrive did not work for me. I couldn't even get verified, and Kareem didn't work in Marrakech for me. What I did use was Robi Taxi, and how I used it was to estimate how much a ride would cost. So here's how it works. I'm going to show you some screens right here. Once we know the ballpark figure of what a taxi ride should cost for that distance or that location, then we would know where to start when haggling with a taxi driver. So we used Robi Taxi just to estimate for the price, but we actually didn't book anything through Robi Taxi because I tried it a few times and it just kept saying it was looking for a driver. And so of course, I'm not going to wait for a long time for a taxi. Just check it out and see if this works for you. And remember, you want to always agree on the price before you get into the taxi. So it's super exciting to be in Marrakech and looking at the amazing landmarks, but just be cautious when you're visiting the historical landmarks. There are a lot of little tiny steps around courtyards. The architecture is amazing, of course, but just don't trip over these tiny steps while you're looking up and around. And while touring different landmarks, I actually saw a few tourists almost trip. So just be careful and don't be surprised if the museum you're visiting is under renovation or if it's closed. For example, this is Bahia Palace, super famous, right, from Marrakech, and this is what we experienced. So just keep your expectations in check. I don't want you to go there and then you're super, disappointed because you can't get all the good pictures that you want to get, because these are really old buildings and landmarks, right? So just don't be surprised if it is partially under renovation when you visit. All right, so here's a bonus tip for Starbucks fans before I get to the last tip for you. So this one is for Starbucks fans who love the You Are Here mugs. And if you are in Marrakech, you can get these You Are Here mugs at the Marrakech train station or at the airport. And so I compared the prices and it is slightly cheaper at the Marrakech train station. So I bought one at the Marrakech airport for 170 dirhams, but I found it for 161 dirhams at the train station. So the price difference is like no big deal at all, but if you're gonna be at both locations anyways, it might be good to know that you can just buy it at the train station. And while you're there, just take some really cool shots of the Marrakech train station. So if you're like me, you might have seen videos on YouTube that, talks about people scamming you at Medinas. And, if you get lost at the Medinas, all the bad things that could happen to you. And my advice is if you're lost and a stranger offers to show you where to go, just politely say no thank you firmly and just keep walking. They are expecting money at the end of wherever they take you. And honestly, just don't follow strangers. You could have Google Apps on your phone and use that instead. Worst case scenario, ask a shopkeeper or a waiter in a restaurant where the Kutubia is. That is, of course, like one of the most famous landmarks in Marrakech. So once you know where the Kutubia is, you should be able to reorient yourself. And one last tip I have for you for that is to download offline Google Maps before your trip, so you still have access to the map even if you don't have a Wi-Fi connection or data connection. So those are my top 10 tips for traveling to Marrakech. And if you found this video helpful, give me a thumbs up and subscribe and stay tuned, because I do have more of these Morocco travel tips for you coming up. So I will see you in the next video.